Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. I think there is a chance in the year 2022 we finally get Khamzat Chimaev versus Leon Edwards, and there is a real chance it's even for a welterweight title. And we're going to talk about that more in a second, but the reason I say we may finally get it is because those of you who may not know, Khamzat Chimaev versus Leon Edwards has been scheduled on 3 separate occasions, and for one reason or another, the fight has not happened. It's basically the welterweight version of Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson. This is a fight that a lot of fans have wanted to see, and I think this year might be the year we finally get it. So first off, let's talk about a couple things that I've touched on in the past in live streams and in certain videos, but I haven't really gone in depth, but a lot of people are talking about this. Does Leon Edwards deserve a title shot? Because Leon Edwards is next in line to fight Kamaru Usman. Dana White has said Leon Edwards is next in line. Kamaru Usman has said he's fighting Leon Edwards next. There's even been some rumors recently that Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards 2, because it's a rematch from an earlier fight in both their careers, that it might be going down in August. And that's kind of what I want to talk about in this video. But first off, Leon Edwards has this long win streak. And I get it. It's not the greatest win streak. His last win was against Nate Diaz at UFC 263, June of last year. Not the greatest win. Even if he dominated the entire fight, not the greatest win, which he did dominate the majority of the fight. But most people remember Nate Diaz rocking Leon Edwards in the last minute or so. Before that, a no contest against Belal Muhammad, which in my opinion, you watch that fight, I get the eye poke happened. Belal Muhammad couldn't continue. I think Leon Edwards was well on his way to beating Belal Muhammad, and I think that would have been a good win, especially if you look at where Belal Muhammad is now. But unfortunately, it's a no contest because of the eye poke. Before that, he has a win over Rafael Dos Anjos. And I know a lot of people say, oh, well, Dos Anjos is a lightweight. And I know it's not the greatest win considering Dos Anjos had mixed success at welterweight, getting dominated by guys like, Usman, and he lost to Colby. I don't think that was super dominant, but Colby clearly won the fight. A win over Gunnar Nelson, a win over Donald Cerrone, those wins really don't mean that much. And there's a lot of talk about this long win streak has earned him a title shot. My thing is, and I've been a defender of Leon Edwards, and I think he should get the next title shot against Kamaru Usman, because a lot of people leave out when they say, oh, well, he hasn't fought anyone. In March of 2020, when the whole world fell apart, Leon Edwards had signed on to fight Tyron Woodley. Now, at this point in time, Woodley had just lost his belt to Usman. So that was a top-ranked opponent, the number 1 contender, Tyron Woodley at the time. For no fault of his own, that fight was canceled. Now, then there was some talk about Leon getting a title shot, and then, next thing you know, he ended up fighting Belal Muhammad in last March was his return after missing his March fight against Woodley in 2020. He ended up fighting in March of 2021 against Belal Muhammad, which was supposed to be Khamzat Chimaev in that March fight. So then there was some talk back and forth from the UFC. The UFC was having trouble getting Leon Edwards out of the UK, and there was issues with traveling and with everything that was going on. And they wanted him to fight Khamzat Chimaev. And at this point, Khamzat Chimaev had only beaten Gerald Meerschaert by KO. It was an impressive win, but I don't even think Gerald Meerschaert was ranked at the time. He might have been number 15. And they really wanted Khamzat Chimaev versus Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards was a little apprehensive about taking that fight because you had Leon Edwards, who's ranked number 1, number 2, and you have Khamzat Chimaev, who has a lot of hype behind him, hadn't really beaten anyone, and now they want to match him up with the guy who's in the top 5 and potentially next in line for a title shot. It's a very weird situation because that very rarely happens. But the UFC wanted to push Khamzat Chimaev. They ended up kind of taking Leon Edwards' rank number away, and then he accepted the fight with Khamzat Chimaev. And we were supposed to get Khamzat Chimaev versus Leon Edwards in December of 2020. I believe it was. Yes, it was December of 2020. And this was the fight that Leon Edwards said, you know what, I'm accepting this contender. And, if I do win, I'm getting the next title shot because I accepted this fight against an unranked guy. And in my opinion, Leon Edwards has already done enough to earn himself a title shot, considering anybody else you could say who deserves it more had already lost. Colby Covington had lost. Usman had already fought Masvidal. But Leon Edwards takes this fight against Khamzat Chimaev in December. They both got COVID. The fight's canceled. I think the reason given was that Leon Edwards pulled out, but both of them had it at this time. It was rescheduled for January. Khamzat Chimaev could not go in January either. Leon Edwards begged the UFC for a replacement opponent. He said, I want to fight. I haven't fought in a while. And he didn't get it. They moved the fight. They said, okay, we're going to reschedule for March now. We're going to get Leon Edwards versus Khamzat Chimaev in March. And this is when Khamzat pulled out again. He still wasn't ready. And they put in Bilal Muhammad on short notice. Then we have the eye poke, the no contest. But the reason the UFC was so desperate to put Khamzat against Leon is because they saw the star power that Khamzat Chimaev was acquiring. And they thought he was ready. Khamzat thought he was ready. They wanted to just toss him in against the top-ranked guys and kind of fast-track him to a title shot if he was able to beat them. If he was able to beat Leon Edwards, they were going to give him the title shot. Well, obviously, that didn't come to fruition. But since then, now all this has happened. Khamzat Chimaev has fought Li Jingliang, got a dominant win, and then fought Gilbert Burns at UFC 273 and got a win in an amazing fight. And now Khamzat Chimaev is sitting at number 3 in the rankings, while Leon Edwards is sitting at number 2 in the rankings. Colby Covington sitting at number 1, but coming off a loss to Kamaru Usman in a title fight. So if you look at the division and then you think about, okay, well, I believe just off Leon Edwards' win streak, and there is some decent wins, and the fact that he's been promised it and he's taken fights. In December of 2021, I forgot to even mention this, he accepted a fight with Jorge Masvidal as well. Jorge Masvidal pulled out only to fight a couple months later. So it's not really Leon Edwards' fault that he doesn't have this top competition or these tough fights on his resume. He accepted a fight with Khamzat Chimaev 3 times. He accepted a fight with Jorge Masvidal December of last year. He accepted a fight in March of last year when he ended up fighting Bilal. Dana White and the UFC, they knew Khamzat was pulling out like a month and a half in advance, and Dana White wanted to give it to Colby. Colby turned down that fight. Leon Edwards accepted that fight as well. So you have a guy in Leon Edwards who hasn't fought the elite of the elite at welterweight, but he's accepted fights with Khamzat 3 times. Accepted the Colby fight. Accepted the Jorge fight. It's not necessarily his fault. So I believe he does deserve the next shot. But now these rumors have come out that essentially it's going to be Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards in August. Well, Brett Okamoto from ESPN came out and spoke to Ali Abdelaziz, who is Usman's manager, about Kamaru Usman's hand, because he broke his hand, he had issues, had surgery. He said, as of now, Kamaru Usman has not been medically cleared, and there's no time frame on his return. Kamaru only started slowly testing the hand this month. So that gives some doubt in the fact that, it's already almost June. I doubt he's fighting in 2 months in August. He would really need to start training right now. The UFC, as of late, has not liked to wait for champions. And they have been throwing out interim title fights willy-nilly. And if Usman can't return this year, he hasn't fought since November of last year. I'm not necessarily saying this is right, depending on the time frame. If Usman can return the end of this year, I think they should wait and do Usman versus Leon for the title. But if he cannot, and even if he can't return till December, it would not shock me if the UFC decides to do Leon Edwards versus Khamzat Chimaev for an interim welterweight title fight. If you look at the division, in my opinion, they're the 2 most deserving. Colby already has 2 losses to Usman. Burns just lost to Chimaev. Bilal's in the discussion with his win over Vicente Luque, but he still probably needs another win. And I think Khamzat Chimaev, even though before Burns hadn't really beat the highest strength of schedule, the win over Burns means a lot. Gilbert Burns is an elite, world-class, top 5 welterweight. And so if those are the 2 most deserving guys, the UFC would probably book them up. And I think it'd be very interesting, considering the history there, that this fight has been booked 4 times or 3 times. This will be the 4th booking. And now we might finally get to see it happen. And I think it's a very fun stylistic matchup because Leon Edwards is a very technical striker, has great footwork. Khamzat Chimaev just wants to rush forward, take you down, batter you on the ground, and either submit you or finish you with ground and pound. And Khamzat Chimaev showed in the Gilbert Burns fight he has very good striking as well. But it'd be a very compelling matchup, and I think it could headline a pay-per-view. And the UFC does not like to headline pay-per-views without title fights. And I think, let's say they need a headliner for UFC 278, UFC 279, UFC 280, in that fall span of UFC pay-per-views. I could totally see them making this for an interim title fight. The winner would fight Kamaru Usman. We've seen it in a lesser amount of time. I actually want to make a video on interim titles because the UFC is just throwing them out left and right. You had Figgy claim his flyweight belt back in the end of January. They're already making an interim flyweight title fight in the end of July. We had Ngannou win his title at the end of March of last year. They did an interim heavyweight title fight in August. They are willing to throw these interim title fights out there without thinking twice because they're like, well, we need it on a pay-per-view. We need it to stack a card. We need it as a headliner. We're not going to headline a pay-per-view without a title fight. And Leon Edwards, how can he turn that down? He's claiming he wants a title shot. Well, now you're getting it. You're just getting it against Khamzat Chimaev instead of Kamaru Usman. So I think that is a real possibility. I could also, and I've touched on this in other videos as well, I could also see the UFC, and I hope this doesn't happen because I really think this would be unfair to Leon, considering he's accepted top contender after top contender, and it just hasn't happened. I could also, with the win over Burns, you could make a case that Khamzat Chimaev deserves the title shot more than Leon, just because he has that big win over Gilbert Burns, who I think is ranked number 3 or 4 right now within the division. And I could totally see the UFC saying, you know what, Usman versus Chimaev is a much bigger fight than Usman versus Leon too. And it is a much bigger fight. Chimaev's name is so hot right now, and he's become a massive fan favorite for his attitude, for his fight style, for his confidence. And now he has beaten a top-ranked guy in Gilbert Burns. I could totally see the UFC skipping over Leon Edwards. And if Usman can return in the fall time, maybe doing Usman versus Khamzat Chimaev. I hope that doesn't happen. But I really believe right now, I would say I'm 60%, a 60% chance that we see Khamzat Chimaev versus Leon Edwards for the interim welterweight title. The winner of that fight will fight Kamaru Usman in early 2023, or worst case scenario, spring of 2023, because Usman hasn't fought since November. And Usman has been very active for the UFC previous to that. So they're not going to strip him or anything. I mean, in the past, we used to not get interim champions until a champion was out for a year or more. So they've been throwing them out more. But they'll do this. They'll say, oh, well, now we'll have champion versus champion if they crown an interim champion in the meantime. And now, technically, it would be a bigger fight, at least promotional-wise. They think it would sell more if you have Kamaru Usman, who's the undisputed welterweight champion, versus a Leon Edwards or a Khamzat Chimaev, who is an interim welterweight champion. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Who would you favor in all these fights? What set of circumstances would you prefer to happen? Would you prefer Usman versus Leon, winner fights Khamzat? Or would you prefer Leon versus Khamzat, winner fights Usman next year? I'm curious what you guys think. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.